Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Rock Crusher, Mastering Agile Backlog Management. I'm your host, Tiffany Aquilino, and I work on the marketing team here at IIBA. IIBA, for those that don't know, is an independent, not-for-profit professional association serving the global business analysis community. We're a recognized thought leader dedicated to elevating the discipline of business analysis, and we provide our global community with relevant tools, resources, and networking opportunities. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A panel, and we will answer your questions at the end of the session as time permits. And today's webinar recording will be available for a limited time on IIBA's webinar archives page within 10 business days of the broadcast. So I am going to jump into some introductions. I am here today with the accomplished authors of The Rock Crusher, a model for flow-based backlog management, for an exciting discussion on the world of Agile Backlog Management. So welcome to Steve Adolph. Steve works as an Agile coach with C Prime and has a PhD in electrical and computer engineering. He has numerous publication credits, including The Rock Crusher, of course, patterns for effective use cases. He is also a member of the core team that developed Agile Extension version 2. Hello, Steve.
Hello, everyone. And hello from Vancouver, Canada.
That's right. And I think I saw some Vancouvers in the chat, so we have some representation from there. I'm moving over to a very warm welcome to Shane Hastie. Shane has been a practitioner and leader in business analysis for over 35 years. Shane was the director of the Agile Alliance from 2011 to 2016 and was the founding chair of the Agile Alliance New Zealand. He's one of the authors of the Agile Extension versions 1 and 2 and a member of the core team for BABOK Guide version 3. Hi there, Shane. Good to see you.
Thanks, Tiffany. Hi, folks. And yeah, welcome from sunny Otaki in New Zealand, although it's a little bit overcast today. Otaki is a tiny little town 80 kilometers north of Wellington.
Sounds beautiful. And moving over to Ryland. Welcome to Ryland Leyton. Ryland, hello. Ryland is a business analyst, author, speaker, educator, agile coach, and technology translator. Ryland is an active member of IIBA and speaks often on business analysis, project management, agility, and career development. His contributions include being a member of the core team of Agile Extension version 2 and the Agile Analysis certification. And moderating today is IIBA's very own community engagement manager, Susan Moore. You may recognize Susan from Business Analysis Live and many of our member webinars. Welcome to all of you. We're so glad to have you here today. So let's get started. I'm going to pass it over back to you, Susan, and we're going to jump into this
Yeah.
thing.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you so much. So let's don't beat around the bush here. Let's just get right to it. Why is this book called The Rock Crusher? I mean, that's weird.
Like all good things in software engineering and in Agile, the Rock Crusher name emerged from a New Jersey bar. Quite a few years ago, I was trying to explain to a client what a backlog was. He became very excited and said, I used to be in materials handling. That sounds a lot like rock crushing. And we sort of drew it out in the funnel, and the model made beautiful sense. It was a beautiful way to imagine the backlog. But also what started reinforcing that is talking to subsequent clients, and they would often refer to their backlog management process as rock crushing. And so it just became this really great metaphor to describe how do we take big ideas, throw away the overburden, and find the gems, the valuable gems that are actually going to create value for our enterprise.
And it's interesting that somebody with sounds like a non-technology background could really clearly understand and give you a great metaphor. So cheers literally, for that friend in the New Jersey bar. Does anybody else want to add anything about why the rock crusher?
Yeah, well, building on the metaphor and from my own experience, I did a fair chunk of work at one point in the kimberlite diamond fields in South Africa, and that is how in the not in the alluvial diamonds where they're coming out of the riverbed, but where they're embedded in these old volcanic cones and pipes. You blast out of the ground these big chunks of rock, and you break them apart. You put them through a crusher. You throw away the waste, and the gems drop down because they've got a higher specific gravity. Well, so when Steve and I were talking about this, it just made so much sense.
Yeah. Also, fun fact, I know you guys have shared with me, rockcrusher.com goes to a gravel company. So there's that. So don't go to rockcrusher.com unless you're interested in some gravel.
I think we have the .org, don't we, Steve?
You have, yeah, rockcrusher.org is where you can find out more about this book. But I think that just shows that this is, this is really a very novel concept when it comes to thinking about backlog management. So why don't we move on to the next question? And by the way, some of these questions came from some prior webinars and talks that we've given. So, so a few of these have previously come from our audience. So Tiffany, our next question is over to you, Ryland. One thing that might be a little bit difficult. So the analogy of the rock crusher makes a lot of sense, but maybe what we could do is help our audience with some more specific examples of how taking something through a rock crusher might work.
Sure. And this is that minute where I can't share my screen while someone else is. So you'll have to.
Oh, all right. So
you'll have to let me. All right. Let's see if I can do this correctly. Come on. All right. Can everybody see the well-formed rock screen there? It looks like it.
Yes.
All right. So this is a thing I really loved about the book when I got into it. And it is surprising. You may all be surprised to hear that when somebody's presenting you with one of these ideas, you can read the rough manuscript of this and say, wow, this is some cool ideas. But I did. I rather liked this. And that's one reason I really enjoyed getting to work with Steve and Shane about this thing. So if you take this as the idea of a rock, which is what we present in the book, okay? So a rock is made up of three things. Two are required. The third comes along the way. An intent and a test that you will apply to that intent, to the delivered thing of the intent. So the intent is realized by the verifiable model. If you're used to doing user stories, the intent is the narrative of the story. Like, as a so-and-so, I want this thing so I can do this benefit, so I get this benefit. The model is the delivered story of that thing. And the tests are the acceptance criteria that you would look at it and say, yeah, that delivered what I expected it to in the story, okay? But you could also do this about hypothesis testing. Like, I think that it would be valuable if we did the following capability for our users. And at the high level, if I circulate that to 6 managers who are used to thinking about those users, and 5 out of 6 agree, then we have a valid concept and we could advance it, okay? That lets you put those concepts in the backlog in a way that you can put your hands on them and you know what you're going to do. And you have acceptance criteria by which you could say, you could change it along the way. Like if you said 8 out of 10, but you get 7 out of 10 and you realize what you should do to tweak it. Okay. You're not a robot. You can advance that concept and say, okay, I know what I'm doing. But if you had 4 out of 10, you would say, no, we're nowhere near ready to advance this. So I like this because it lets you put more things in the backlog and describe their state of readiness. So with that said, let me give you that idea of elaboration. And I'm hoping this will work because I did it kind of quickly before the meeting. So this is the concept we advance, you may have seen for the rock crusher model, okay? Things come in at the top, and then they tumble and are refined and perhaps get blown up, split apart, value found through transformation, okay? There's any of the different kinds of techniques you might want to apply get done here. And it's not just splitting, okay? We're not splitting a story into smaller pieces necessarily. We're also removing things or discovering things we need to enhance and change. They're drawn out through the thin pipe. That's where the most valuable thing is. We say, okay, that we're going to draw through. For software, we're pulling a ready thing through the thin pipe to build actual software. Except for that, you're not building anything, okay? And of course, other stuff goes out through the wastegate, because what comes out equals, in a sense of the volume of it anyway, has to come out. Now, it's a metaphor, and as we like to say, all models are wrong, but some models are useful. Okay, so I can't measure the weight of ideas that go in, but I can tell you what's in the backlog and when I want to throw things away. I think one of the other gentlemen is going to talk about the wastegate more later, so I'm going to leave it alone for now. But let's take a look at this. At the high level, wishful thinking, we might say we have this library search system and we want to improve it. And we can't decide which one of these ideas we want to do, but we have 10 capabilities we think would improve it. And we don't have the capacity to do all 10, but we want to do something. Well, let's do a focus group about which things our customers, our users of the library system, think should be improved. And if any of them scores 80% or more on needs improvement, then we will agree that that thing needs improving and see how many we get. Well, we did it. 3 ideas passed that test. This is just surveying humans, presumably humans are users. And, you know, it could be online, in person, it could be any way you do, but you've got your thing done. All right, so then we've passed those 3 ideas down into here. We're going to say we think whichever capability. I might have 3 different capabilities. Now I've got 3 different items in the backlog. I had one that contained 10 things. Now I've got 3 individual ones that I'm refining. This capability could be improved by making a set of revisions. I've decided, I'm asserting what they are. The model that we're going to build is a UX tool mockup, or if it's cheap, a prototype, or as some people point out, if it's trivial to make those improvements, just make them, see if it's better, okay? But let's pretend it's not quite that easy. We design those things, we either make the mockup or a prototype or whatever we think is right, and we'll do a comparison with people saying, here's the old one, is what we're proposing to do better or worse or just as good as the one you've been given? So we'll threshold test those. That's our test we're applying to the verifiable model. We discover that 2 things meet the threshold. Those continue to move down, and at the ready level, we have stories that represent appropriate construction units of the things that of the 2 ideas that passed from here to here. And as colleagues like to remind me, and we may discover as we get through those stories, we've done enough or we got to shift on. You know, we can always play the other stories if we need to, but we've got them ready, and maybe they were gold plating. We don't really need them. So that's how this works. And you can see it in the backlog. That's the thing I loved about this. It gives me a way to manage this. And remember, I said 3 ideas passed to here, and 2 of these passed on. Well, if this one that we said was going to work, maybe we still keep it at that level. We redesign it and apply the same test. And then we decide we're going to go ahead and do that. So we kill a few of these stories and we pull in a few of those instead, and we've improved things. So that's the idea there. And I'll stop and I'll return the screen over to you.
Thank you.
So what I'm hearing then is we're thinking about, you know, maybe a lot of us have worked in organizations where, you know, when the marble gets added at the top of the game, that the assumption is it's just going to go all the way through as it is. And what we're seeing with this model of the rock crusher is that at each level, we are making a decision. Well, I don't even know if are we making a decision? We're sort of identifying if it's worth going on with it, right? As we're breaking it down. Okay.
One of the 4 questions in refinement is it worth it?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, kill it now.
With fire.
Do not throw good money after bad is the most simple way that we can say it. And always asking that question, is it worth it?
And I think the thing there is, remember, and I think almost everybody on this call probably works in an organization like this. There's always more demand for your available capacity than you could meet. So you have to have some way to decide what you're going to do and not going to do.
Yeah. And it also sounds like we need, as business analysis professionals, we also need to help with a mind shift around the assumption that the way the thing comes in, the format that it has come in, and the idea itself is going to end up like that when it comes out of this. That is, in fact, not what what we should be assuming to be true here. So we really need to challenge that at every level. And I think you do have those questions that we could be asking along the way of the group. Like, is it worth it? Do we need to do it now? Those kinds of things.
What
Yeah.
I want to point out in that model that Ryland showed there, what we should keep in mind, it demonstrated continuous learning. We are continuously learning if this idea is worth it, right? We got some evidence when we sort of filtered the first set. We got more evidence. Okay, these three might be worth it now. These two are worth it, right? We're continuously asking that question: is this worth it? We're using our process to learn what is really valuable.
Yeah, great point there. Any last thoughts on this? All right, because as we are talking about this and thinking about some of the ways that business analysis professionals can be part of this, and maybe some ways that we might start to rethink how we work in this model, Shane, I've got this question for you. Business analysis professionals, they often feel like, or sometimes they really are, left out of the work of the team when they're doing backlog management. So where do you see analysts fitting into what to what you guys call in the book the rock crusher village? And what unique talents and values do an analyst bring to that team?
So business analysis professionals bring a number of key skills, but one of the things we call out in particular is the ability to span boundaries. So the role of the analysis professional is not to sit there and write out user stories for the team. It's to facilitate bringing the right people together. And the BA professional often is the one who has the relationships into the stakeholder community and can find who are the right people. We challenge in the book the role of the product owner as it's defined, and I'm going to let Steve tackle that one a little bit later on. But it's yeah, Alan Kelly put it beautifully. Only supermen need apply, because it is just so wide, so hard. And we wanted to recognize the capabilities, the competencies that need to be there to really identify value in a product. And the skill sets that the analyst brings, the analytical thinking, the synthesis thinking, the ability to look beyond, and that relationship management, the modeling skill sets, the ability to take complex systems and represent them in ways that others can understand them. These are all highly important skill sets, and we've called out that there are a variety of different perspectives that need to be brought together at the same time. And the analysis professional, one of the things that they're really good at is finding the right people.
I think that is we often maybe define ourselves as analysts as delivering, different kinds of outputs. But, I always say business analysis is a relationship business. And that is why, because if we're really doing our job correctly, I think that we are building these relationships so that we can uncover knowledge and talk, bring all of that to the table, which is really an important part of the work that we do. Any other thoughts on why analysts are, uniquely qualified to be or have unique talents to bring it to this?
I think as Shane said, they're the boundary spanner, or you might want to refer to them as a social butterfly.
Yeah.
But also in terms of the facilitation role, because think of what the role really involves here. You are taking the hopes, the dreams, the aspirations of different stakeholders, subject matter experts, tech engineers, customers, and you are trying to synthesize that into something all of them can understand, not just the programmers, customers. Customers being able to say, yes, you understand my problem. Software developers, yes, we understand the problem that you're giving us, right? This is really what the role, in part of that role of being the BA, or as I just prefer to call it, the analyst. Can I get everyone on the same page? Do we all understand the problem we're trying to solve is?
Yep.
I think another thing that contributes to that is the way, through certification and other stuff, we think of enterprise analysis. The example I always use is I worked at a company one time, it was in a regulated industry, telephony. So local, it was the regional phone company at the time. And we could build you a new feature. The feature was often the easier thing to build. Getting it on the bill and representing the bill correctly, how that impacted your bill, how we collected the taxes correctly for it, represented it in whatever state you resided in, collected your state, federal, local taxes on that thing, charged you differently if necessary. That could be more work than constructing the feature. So thinking about a product, as I see it, my experience from these things was a lot of our customers come to us and say, I want to build the following feature, capability, whatever it may be. And we think, okay, how will I provision that to a customer, collect revenue for it if I need to? How will we train people to sell that or service that? What happens when we withdraw the product from your service, if it's a service type of thing? Or in a physical product space, how will we accept returns? How will we process a refund? These are things which might be different for the thing in question and might not, but we at least think about that so that the thing can go out on schedule and the enterprise is protected and all the stakeholders in the enterprise are successful. Like we win everywhere in the business as far as being successful at achieving the thing we set out to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so bringing that full scope, full process perspective is another piece of that that's really important to understanding the backlog. So let's see. So our next question, we kind of touched on this product owner piece a little bit, because that's in many places when we've talked with our members, they say, oh, well, my company is now, we've got product owners. We no longer have business analysts. And so in classical Agile methodologies, they say that there's just that one person that keeps things moving, that's responsible for the backlog and so on and so on. But a lot of times this person is really overwhelmed. So how does the rock crusher suggest solving this problem? And Steve, I'm going to hand this one to you.
Well, this is exactly gets down to one of the significant issues that we looked at with the rock crusher. And I will say it very much up front, but the idea of the role of the product owner is at best a cheat. It is a way of somehow pushing all of the work that is done to determine precisely what to build behind a role and just focus on the technology side of the equation. And all this work falls onto the shoulders of the product owner. Now, yes, that can work in a very small, tight-knit organization, no doubts about it. I've seen that work. But the reality is in any significant enterprise, that role as described by the product owner is an impossible role. And there was a wonderful book by Kelly who said, only superhumans need to apply. There's numerous blog posts about saying, okay, let me get this straight. This is what this product owner has to be able to do. They have to be able to think in business strategic terms, have close relationships with the end user, and oh, by the way, be available 24/7 to the team and be able to talk technical to the team and help them understand that work. Naturally, that can fall on their shoulders of one role. And
they do it part-time.
And do it part-time.
Because they've got a day job and they're appointed
exactly.
To.
Yeah, that's
right. And then on top of that, like I said, early research, but that was done. You can go back to especially some of the research that was done by Robert Biddle at Carleton University, started pointing out this role is impossible. He actually wrote, it is, describing it as, this is a stressful role, right? And the other part about, just as Shane says, usually the person we anoint or nominate as that product owner has a day job, or they have a day job and they're interested in one specific project or one specific initiative the team is working on and ignores the rest of the work. And so this is really why we said, look, it takes a village to manage a backlog. There is a village of roles, not necessarily individuals, but a village of roles, because in a small, tight-knit team, it is entirely possible one individual can fulfill those roles. But any real organization, you are going to have a solution owner, someone who is interested in the solution that's being built. And the team may be working on multiple solutions. So you actually may have multiple solution owners. You are going to have subject matter experts who understand the problem domain, understand the technical domain. You are going to have a customer. You are going to have an analyst who's trying to take the hopes and dreams of everyone. And ultimately, you do need to have somebody who actually owns the backlog. In other words, they are accountable for prioritizing all of the work in the backlog. So bottom line on this one of the reasons that so many of our issues are associated with the product owner is we've set them up for failure in the first place.
Yeah. And actually, when we were on Business Analysis Live this morning, you kind of had a fun question to the group, and we actually created a poll for this. Let's see what this group says. So Tiffany, the question was, as a product owner, do you feel you have a high level of stress? This isn't a scientific poll, but we're just curious. Is Steve's theory correct? Or Dr. Biddle's theory, is it correct? So we'll leave this up for just a minute. While we're doing that, hey Ryland, did you want to elaborate on the product owner piece a little bit more?
Well, this is the thing I dealt with when I was writing the Agile Business Analyst, moving from waterfall to Agile, the book I've done there. If I could share my screen a sec, I think you got to stop yours. If this hopefully this doesn't interrupt the poll. If it does, please don't do it.
I don't think
I'm
it
just
will.
gonna let me end the poll anyways, and then
go ahead.
I will
let people answer. Give them a minute. Let's not
97% yes or sometimes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
That's pretty clear. So yeah,
Yes.
people are kind of feeling overloaded as a PO. So okay, was there a part 2 to the poll, or should I jump in? Okay,
You can
There
jump
is
in.
not. Yeah, you jump in.
So I this was kind of the thesis of that book for a bit. So if you've got this ideal product owner, which is kind of what Steve and Shane were saying, and guys, I think I shared this with you when we were working in the book. Like, I've been talking about this since at least 6 or 7 years ago. This is what we say an ideal PO is going to be. They're a product expert. They're an analyst expert. They're a domain expert. And magically, you can scan that list yourself. And do they have enough time to do everything they're supposed to do? No, that's not the way it works in the real world, right? And if you're in a larger enterprise, I often challenge people, and I'll just give the answer here. How many people can you afford like this? That's an entrepreneur. Basically, what you just described here, if someone is really good at all of these things and passionate about it, they're probably working for themselves, or they've got their own vision in their company somehow, okay? They're probably an entrepreneur. This is a very entrepreneurial mindset. Now, just limiting it to just the analyst and product owner role, and as Steve was pointing out, there are many more, right? There are technical subject matter experts, interaction, marketplace, marketing, all kinds of stuff. I was saying, if you have the product owner, we kind of neatly split between the business analyst and the product manager roles, and this person can still be the product owner. The key distinguishing thing here between a BA and a product owner, if you want to just relabel this as the core skills of the product owner, is backlog authority. Somebody has the right to commit this team to action. And when I challenge people in coaching roles, I said, who's got the right to do it? Well, the BA is going to be the PO. I said, let me just be clear about those folks, because you know them. And I want to check that you're okay with this. I challenge them. Are you comfortable with them wielding backlog authority? Which means that without an escalation, which happens, does happen, but they better not be every day or something's wrong. That person has the right to make the decisions about what the dev team will and won't spend their work on, with as far as that ability goes. And the honest answer I got one time was, let me get back to you. And about a week later, that group was really thinking about it, and they got back to me and they said, yes, we will give the BA, who we are now designating the PO as the PO, the right to have the backlog authority. We are going to go with that and see how it goes. We acknowledge it'll be a shift for them, and we're going to support them in doing it. Rock on, I can work with you. If you'd said no, I wasn't sure where we were going next, because someone has to have that, and as leadership, you got to be comfortable with them having it. And, because those skills are very overlapping and collaborative. So I just want to point out that's one of the ways. And I didn't even blend in the other roles that the guys were talking about. Okay.
Yeah. As you were talking about that, I was thinking, even if your organization may not be ready for this concept of the rock crusher, that conversation that you just had, where you laid out the responsibilities of the product owner and looked across the people on the team with the right skill set and talked about who should be doing it, like those could be conversations that you could have now. They are really things that help us just perform better. And ultimately, isn't that what Agile is supposed to be about? Like having these conversations so that we can perform better. So think about that as we're talking about where the work of backlog management falls. Steve, when we were talking this morning, we had some questions around where does the project manager fit and where do these kinds of roles fit? And I think your point earlier was don't think about that role that person has or the job title that person has, but think about their skill set. Think about what they enjoy doing, what they bring, where can they fit in the needs of the team. And I don't know if you want to add any more about that, but I thought that was a really novel way of thinking about how we can make sure that we have the important roles covered in the village.
That's exactly it. I mean, going back to our conversation this morning about the project manager, right? When the Agile coaches come in and the project managers start looking at, most Agile methodologies, they don't see a project manager role on them. That's kind of these days, that's a little bit of a freak out. And the conversation, when project managers turn to me and say, well, where's my role? And it's like, what would you like to do? Right? You've got these amazing skills you've developed, to try and get things done. How would you see using your skills? And it's really asking people, and that's why these are roles, because they're not job titles. Some of the first companies I worked with, none of us had job titles as analyst, programmer. We were just members of technical staff. That was it. You were a tester, developer, analyst, you were a member of technical staff. And that's the way I look at the team. Hey, we are a team, and we're going to work together to create value to figure out what creates value and to deliver it. What roles are we going to play? What skills do we need to be able to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to call out one role that we did pull out and put in the center in our village. We've called it the backlog owner. There has to be, and Steve did touch on it, but I just want to really emphasize this. There has to be a single person who can make the priority decisions about this is more important than that. And that person's decision is final. So in the context where you've got multiple solution owners, people who care about different aspects, maybe this team is working on 2 or 3 different value streams worth of work, there is a single individual who is saying, with all of these things that people are asking for, we will do that one first and that one second. And that has to be a single individual empowered to make the decision, and that decision is final. Because otherwise, the thrashing for the work of the team becomes untenable.
Yeah.
It's awful. Like I've seen, like to put it very straightforward, think of a team that has, just let's say we're in a project-oriented environment, and we have a number of different project managers or program managers. Think of them as solution owners, and they each own a project, and they're trying to get the team to work on that. If there isn't somebody going this before that, then what you're going to have is this competition between these project managers that is going to cause huge coordination delays on the team. Literally, I've had a small scrum team. We are talking 7 people who could not coordinate themselves because they had different demands that were being placed on them by various project managers. In other words, I literally had one person on a team say, their priorities are not my priorities. How do you get a team to move something from the backlog and get it done? And so this is why we really need one person who can clearly say, this is the priorities, such that this team can focus and get things done. And we minimize the work in progress.
So I want to, if it's all right, I want to throw in a point on this. I'm seeing a lot of people comment in the chat. It's a luxury that being a member of a panel at the moment, I get to look at the chat once in a while. There are a lot of ways to do all of these things. I love that people are pointing out, well, we call that person this, we call this person that.
Those are the value owner. Yes.
I don't think I haven't seen anything here. I would say never do that too in the chat. Okay. I would say, hey, I don't know enough about your universe to be critical of that. Doesn't sound bad to me how you're doing it, you know? So far, as long as everybody's saying there is someone who has this authority, is clearly, they have the right to make those decisions, and people have all the ability to persuade and disagree or agree or otherwise, or make a case about. But at some level, someone has to have the decision right. And that doesn't mean they do it in a vacuum. They do it on behalf of the company as a whole. Like they manage, as Shane was saying, competing needs. And as I was saying, there's always more that you want to do than you have ability to do. Someone has to make the call. So somewhere there has to be that authority in a very clear, actively executable way. Okay, it might be committee at a higher level, like we're going to do these initiatives and not those, when there's runway to make that decision. But it gets down to what the team's building. And let's remember, for most frameworks, if I burn development time and I don't get anything out of it, I don't get that time back. If the team is idle for a week for some reason, which we never want to have happen, right? You don't get another week somewhere. It doesn't work that way. So we have to have someone at the tactical level making sure the investment that's represented by the team members, their salaries, their time, all of those things, is being utilized in the best way it can at the time it's available. So just to point that out, there's a lot of ways to get there. It's just important that you have one and you know what it is in your organization.
Yeah, that's where that tailoring, I think, in the organization can come in, again, because it's based on whether it's the politics in your organization, the strengths of your organization, the strengths of your team, and the people on it. I'm with you. I see lots of different ways that it sounds like teams have come up with ways to solve it. So these are all great ideas. So I'm going to, yeah.
Susan, and remember something really important. These concepts in the book emerged from our observations of our clients. What were they doing that was successful? So this is just like, all we did was integrate these practices into a consistent taxonomy and model.
And that's a great point, that this book is based on your experiences. And, you know, the experiences of some of our viewers today may be different. So again, just consider the Rock Crusher is really, I guess, evidence-based ways of thinking about these different problems, but ultimately the solutions might look different at your organization. So let me skip ahead a little bit in the questions, Tiffany, because I know one of the things that it seemed previously that folks had a lot of questions about with the Rock Crusher was that concept of waste. Because I do hope, Steve, you keep saying it's the thoughts and dreams and aspirations of people, but there can be a lot of, whether it's emotions or politics or other things that are associated with items that get put into the backlog. So maybe why don't we just start with talking a little bit about waste, why it's hard, and maybe some thoughts about how analysts can help with, I don't know, getting rid of the waste. I don't know a good way to say it.
So a little bit of background on the wastegate. This was a critical aspect of the Rock Crusher, because the intent of the Rock Crusher is to focus on value. And in any organization, we have millions of ideas, right? And they're all good. We can all make justification for them. We have to recognize that we have a limited capacity to develop and deliver those ideas. That's why we have this, we modeled that as the thin pipe. And there's lots of nice things about that because, if you put too much stuff through the thin pipe, it'll clog, right? So that really represents what literally happens to a dev team. We push too much on them, work in progress skyrockets, lead times skyrocket. So we had to say we have many more ideas. How do we prevent this thing from overflowing? We need to throw things out. Throwing things out means we know what's valuable. You may have a good idea, but it's just not it doesn't bring the benefit to our organization as this one. And, in the early days of Apple, when Steve Jobs was still there, why Apple became one of the more successful companies it did was a relentless focus on what was valuable. When Steve Jobs came back to Apple, Apple had an entire portfolio of products across the board they were selling. Effectively massively cut most of those products down and said, these are what are the valuable products to Apple. So I always keep thinking about that example. And I always like to bring up the idea that strategy is knowing what you're not going to do. Because the argument always comes down to, I've heard this so many times, why is this in the backlog? And I think hopefully, I think some of my current client members are attending here. I'm not picking on you guys, okay? So many clients have things that are in their backlog that are thousands of days old. Why are we dragging that? Well, it might be valuable someday. We haven't touched it in 5 years. Why are we dragging this stuff? Right? That's, why do we, yes, it was a good idea, but ultimately we're never going to do it. And if we keep dragging this stuff around with us, it really is confirming the hypothesis. We don't have a good idea of what's valuable to our organization. So the wastegate plays this really, really critical role of what is valuable. The second part of that question is, well, what's a candidate for the wastegate? I would say a first one is just aging.
Okay.
That's a very simple.
If it's older than 90 days, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
But also, you could start, and a more sophisticated way would also be starting to look at, all right, we keep asking, is this rock worth it? Right? And there may be an equation there. Like, for example, using a weighted shortest job first, there could be a threshold there. Hey, we're going to get this much value, but we're going to have to do this much work to do that. That's probably not a good bet then.
Yeah. I know another question that I've seen is like, who gets to make the final decision on waste? And I can't help but think about the conversation we were just having. Do you also have somebody who makes that final decision on waste?
Well, I mean, to throw a few things together, it's the same way you have a definition of ready, you might have a definition of consider for wastegate, which could be 90 days. I'm just making this out of the air. Everybody's would be different the same way everyone's definition of ready for development is different. At 90 days staleness, we will consider removing it. At 180 days staleness, it will be removed. It simply will. We were going to cut everything out. And I don't think you need a separate owner for that. That's still a backlog question. And while you could have guidelines and rules for it, it's a little different than a definition of ready because developers need a specific thing to go and build. These are concepts you could bend a little bit and renew a thing. You could have rules. We're not trying to be robots. We're trying to be realistic. So I think that you don't need a separate person for this. I think the point is to have some.
And it's built into the definition of a well-formed rock. That verifiable model and the test at every level you should be testing. And if the test fails, kick it out.
Throw it out. Yeah.
So Ryland's example earlier, we're going to take this past 10 stakeholders, and if 8 of them agree, it's fine. And we get 4, throw it out. Don't go and try and, could we? No, throw it out. If it's valuable enough, it'll come back.
Or reintroduce it with a new rock. That's fine, right? But make those decisions because, it left, and that's a great strategy too. It failed the test. make a choice. Either give us a new rock that you think will pass with a different tech, with, its test this time, or something. It's also important to clear it out because it's noise. Let me point this out. I've talked to people where they say, oh, we don't clean our backlog out. Really? What's the oldest item? 4 or 5 years. And it hasn't been touched. I want you to picture your kitchen pantry or your clothing closet. If you haven't even considered eliminating things from it, when you keep adding to it, the kitchen, we know we keep adding to the kitchen, right? You know what wastegate in the kitchen is, right? I know some people are probably thinking of the closet. I always keep things in the closet that long. Terrible example. Spoilage doesn't happen necessarily in your closet, but in your kitchen, I can tell you they're going bad, right? There's nothing, even canned stuff, you shouldn't consider throwing out after 5 years. Okay, so I'm just pointing this out. Picture you have that kitchen analogously growing for 5 years. Imagine how horrible it is to navigate through all the things you don't need to deal with all of the things that you do need now.
You're describing the top shelf of my refrigerator.
I didn't want to make it personal. You did that.
And the wastegate is so critically important here because it really is an indication. Do we know what's valuable? And when Shane and I were at BBC in Vegas back in May doing the tutorial, we asked the participants in that tutorial, like, what are the issues that you're having with backlog management? The majority of the responses that we got were related, no one knows how to make a prioritization decision. We don't know what our priorities are. This we have to realize is a big problem because this is all about value management. Do we really know what's valuable to our organization?
Yeah, I think ultimately, just like keeping all these things and never getting rid of them, I think it's just a symptom of we don't know what's important. I think that is pervasive in a lot of organizations. And really, just like when you do that spring cleaning, when you clean out that garage or whatever, right? You get such a sense of satisfaction of now I have stuff that is, what does Marie Kondo say? She says it brings us joy. Could our backlogs actually bring us joy or spark joy? That's what she says.
You didn't know it, but she's actually a business analyst, right?
That's
she's
right.
giving you criteria for what to keep.
That's right.
You can test based on that.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what.
Who shouts loudest is not a prioritization mode.
I saw that one also. Yes. There were a few thoughts, but let's keep going.
Okay, I was going to say, why don't we move over to some questions? I know we've got some that are over in our Q&A box, so just a reminder, if you've got questions, you can put it there. I've turned on voting, so if you see a question and you have that same question, just give it an upvote, and then Tiffany, I will let you take these. And I think the good news is some of these, Tiffany, I think we might have already touched on. Because wastegate was the thing.
Yeah.
There's one I'd like to tackle fairly shortly, okay, which is about, does the rock crusher align with the invest criteria?
Okay.
So when a rock is at the point where it's ready, when it's coming out into the thin pipe, the verifiable model will be the invest criteria.
Okay. So yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me throw one other thing in. Shane, I wanted to prompt you on this one because I felt you were kind of the keeper of this point as we were writing so much, which is I wanted to talk to the audience for a second. We've frequently been using agile frameworks as our topic here. We're saying product owner, we're saying scrum master, or in the chat it's happening a lot. And we're talking about sprints and scrums and so on. Is there any reason the concepts we put forward are only for agility for some reason?
No. Irrespective of the methodology or approach you're using, the idea of filtering ideas, of getting rid of things that are not going to be valuable, of prioritization. What I will assert that is, if you're in a knowledge worker environment building software intensive products, an agile way of doing that is going to be better than trying to do it in a sequential waterfall manner. But even if you're designing and building trucks, well, thinking about the features, what possible features could we have and which ones won't we have, put it through the funnel.
I mean, this lends itself, I mean, certainly the intent behind this is to support fast feedback cycles, right? This is the mechanisms with it, being able to dump things very quickly, the different readiness horizons. The whole exercise here is to bring fast learning cycles throughout the whole value stream. I mean, part of the argument that we've made, Ryland, here is that the agile practices, as most organizations are using them, are only focused on a small subset, a silo of the value stream. And that's the only area that we get fast feedback and learning in. We ignore the rest of the value stream, usually the product discovery, operations, and we're trying to bring agility to the whole value stream, or the fast learning cycle to the whole value stream.
Okay. Any other questions? You guys can also see the questions that we have. Do you see anything else in
There's
there?
something that just that popped into chat from Steve. It's not in the Q&A though, so I don't know if we wanted to take a peek at that one.
Yeah. So is this Steve's question? So if you remove something from the backlog, who will remember it was there? That question?
Yeah.
Well, there is that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Backlog
Like
is large enough.
if a tree falls in the woods, is it kind of like that question?
Yeah.
Who will hear it?
I mean, it's possible, but someone else had pointed out, people who ask for backlog items typically have a focus on theirs, and that's why it won't get missed by at least somebody. Probably, not always. They might have left the company after all.
So this is where we establish, like, we have something called like the rock crusher canvas. And one of the questions is asked, what is your wastegate policy? Like, if you decide you're going to eject something take something out through the wastegate, do we just delete it? Like, it's gone forever? That's a reasonable policy. A lot of organizations have fridges, some even freezers, but the intent is, look, it is not under active consideration. It's archived. Let's put it this way. The archive, honestly, is a place where things go to die. But I would honestly argue that those practices are more visceral satisfaction for any other reason. Because if you triggered the wastegate policy, it means we really have a lot of evidence that this thing is not going to contribute value. Yes, it's a good idea, and we're not diminishing the person who came up with it, but there's all these other good things that we could be working on.
Yeah. No, you don't want it as a distractor. And it's what we were saying before. It's noise. If you're not dealing with it, then at some threshold, it's just noise.
Yeah.
Clutter. Move on.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean people can't keep their own pet list of things they really are interested in and watch for them for a time when they become relevant again. That's fine. We're just talking about the backlog that the team is working from, or that the local organization has a relevancy to be able to see and work with. If you have to filter 500 items that aren't important to find the 10 that are, something might be wrong.
Yep.
If I can just pull us to the questions, a number of people, both in the chat and on the Q&A, are asking about scaling.
Yes.
How does this model apply in scaling models? And we've got a whole chapter in the book on ways that you can address scaling. And it looks at things like the time horizons you're working at. We name the time horizons. We deliberately don't give them time frames because that's going to be local to your organization. We also look at, do we have a single organization funnel that then goes through to a single pipe, or do we have one funnel feeding multiple different funnels? So there's a strategic level of looking at things and a tactical level. There are multiple ways to address the scaling challenge, and there's no one size fits all. We've certainly looked at it and said, these are ways we have seen it work. And I do want to reiterate what Susan was saying. These are not just ideas that we academically came up with. all of Steve's academic ideas. We did make him prove to us that they were actually in real practice as well, because Steve is the academic among us. But we've seen these things in play in real world organizations, and our whole intent is, here are some ideas that you can use. Here are some ways that you can adapt these ideas to different contexts. Do we have the perfect answer? No. You need to find the right way for your own context. And Steve mentioned the Rock Crusher Canvas and the workshops that we do, where we actually help people implement the Rock Crusher model.
Could I just show off the Rock Crusher Canvas for 1 second here?
Sure.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
I will stop sharing.
It's not that pretty. It's, you could tell it was designed by an engineer and very, very intended to be very functional. But I know, and it's very, very popular to call everything a canvas these days. You can pick this up right now at rockcrusher.org. Please forgive that the website is still a bit in progress, but it's functional. But it really just asks you, okay, a series of questions, and you answer. Like, first question, why are you doing this? Let's be very clear on the problem that you're adopting the Rock Crusher to solve. What metrics? Where is the Rock Crusher going to be positioned? What is the solution that it's contributing to? Who's in your village? Like, who owns the backlog? Who are the solution owners? Who's playing the role of the analyst? Are we very clear about the roles that people are playing? What are horizons? Our intake policy, our wastegate policy. What ceremonies are we going to associate? And then we also have this thing called a crusher, which we really didn't talk about, which is really representing the work that, as an analyst, we're doing to understand and learn about other rocks. But this is a really lovely little tool to just sit down and just think about your backlog. Who's doing what with our backlog? Because we treat the backlog just sort of this passive reservoir. We don't think of it as this tool for actively managing value. And we just need to really begin to take care in the way that we manage and operate our backlog. That's all I was going to share there. Let's see. There we go.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I think that canvas is really helpful. It's a helpful way to just assess where you are. One other way, and we talk about value, but let's really talk about what backlogs are. Like, there's real money that will be spent either in managing that backlog, committing to that backlog, doing work from that backlog. And so I think if you start to think about it in terms of the amount of money that could be tied up with that, you really begin to understand why it is so important to have a pretty lean, efficient backlog. So that's where having a plan for how your organization is going to manage your backlog is important.
The topic for dollars there, and I think I know we're going to be close to time here, so if we get a question, that'd be good. Also, cost of running your process is important. Everyone's probably familiar with this idea of, we talk about meetings. Well, that was $1,000 meeting, or whatever, because we know that if you just assume everybody in that room is X per hour and you multiply, how you have an idea of it. Part of the thing that we go into in the book, and I'm just going to point at it here, is we talk about this is an ability to surface the value or the cost of analyzing things higher in the funnel. Because we've all been there in consulting, and you've probably all been there transparently in one way or another, or invisibly, I should say, in one way or another in businesses. Well, can't you just size or figure out how hard it would be to do all of these things, and then I'll pick which one? I can't. And it's not that I'm not willing to, it's I actually can't. There is a cost and an amount of effort to figuring that answer out, even at a rough level, for each one of these things. And if I pull the team off to do it for this whole stack just to estimate them, you will lose this much actual work that could have been delivered. Would you like to identify this amount of work? No, then we're not going to do things that way. We're going to identify them in some other manner. And there is a real cost to that. And there's a whole section in the book on it, so I won't go into that more, but I liked that it let us begin that discussion, if nothing else, because I still get that question even today. Can't you estimate all this? I can't. I have to pull the whole team off dev to do it. That's not practical. You're not going to do 100 of these things. Tell me the top 6 you think you might want to do. We'll see how big that is first.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Maybe we have,
Fantastic.
I know we are at time. Do we want Steve to answer one more question? Seems like he has.
I really do. It would make my
All right,
day.
okay, this will be the last question. So Steve, you wanted to answer the question, do we kill it when we think it's not worth it?
Yes.
Done.
And more time.
Just
Well done,
enough
Steve.
time for that.
Yeah.
Well done.
And take it out of the backlog like it's gone. Yeah.
It's going.
Yeah.
Think of literally cleaning out that closet or the top shelf of the refrigerator. It's gone.
Yep, it's really gone. All right. Well, on that note, I want to thank our speakers for another lively conversation. I always enjoy getting together with you. So Shane, Steve, Ryland, thank you so much. Tiffany, thank you so much for being here. And we also want to thank our attendees today for joining us. We're getting lots of claps and everything else. Tiffany, do you have any parting thoughts?
Just echoing my thank you to all of you, including you, Susan, all the attendees. This topic, I feel like we could go on for 2 hours. It's such a great discussion. Last quick thing I'm going to mention is upcoming for us is Global Business Analysis Day. So pop that on your calendars, and that's about it. Thank you so much for joining today, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
See you at the next
See you.
one.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, folks.
Bye.